Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to speak about Science Museum, and it's always a good news, a new project, a new Science Museum or Science Center. I will use my time in order to, I will concentrate in two aspects. The first is the method, the museographical method that we think that should be used now in this century. And secondly, about the content of a natural history museum. I just proposed for the next Excite meeting this question, no? How should be a natural science museum in this century? So the first thing is the language, or the definition. I would say, I took a view now of your museum, and I have to say that I liked very much many things, especially beauty. I think Wim is right when he says about charm, because what is important in the museum is not to visit, but to come back. It's not the number of visitors. It's not to visit, but to use. To be used is the museum. It's a tool of social change today, a museum. And what is also important is that after the visit, you have more questions that you had before the visit, so that all the other methods that represents a transmission of knowledge can be used. So the museum never replaces other methods like conferences, lectures, videos, etc., but has his own language. This is my first point. What is the language of the museum? Now I am using the spoken word that is different than the written word or the image, and I think that we still have not the real language that deserves a museum. We still use texts, we still use videos, we still use multimedia, we still use computers, we still use many things, but perhaps not the proper language of a museum. So I think that the definition would be a museum today is a meeting space devoted to provide stimuli in the first place. All the process of acquiring new knowledge has three stages: stimuli, some kind of conversation, and understanding. A museum has his best chance in the first part, the transition between not being specially interested in something to a second stage in which you are obsessively interested in something. This is what the museum cannot be replaced by any other thing. But then, in order to succeed with that, to provide stimuli in favor of three things: scientific knowledge, scientific method, and scientific opinion, we use reality. I think reality is the word of the museums. But reality are not only objects. Reality are objects and phenomena. I think in the story of museums, we have a first part in which the museums had only objects but no phenomena. Recently, we have museums with phenomena but no collections. So both things are pathologically from the point of view of reality, because reality has two folds: objects that occupy space and phenomena that occupy time. But we have a problem. Many things are not accessible to the sensorium. There are things they are not visible because they are too small, like molecules, like bacteria. There are things they are not visible directly because they are too close or too big, like planet Earth, or too far, like planet Neptuno, or too complex, like a rainforest, or because they are not transparency, like a working heart in a living body, or because it's too slow, like the growing of a plant, or because it's too fast, like the flight of a bird. All of these can be are not visible through objects and through phenomena, but they can be useful through metaphor. I set a beautiful metaphor here of a bird. This is a great and brilliant museographical idea, a pigeon flying in the different stages of the flight. So this is to make visible something that is not directly visible because it's too quick, too fast. Okay, so I want to convince you that reality is the real language of a museum. The first thing is to define what is a real object. So this is a fish in Cosmocaixa, a living fish. This is a real object. Of course, this is a real object, but not a 100% real object, because this fish swimming in the Amazon River is even more real. So, a good definition of real object is an object that represents itself. These are 100% real objects as a fish in an aquarium. Or this is a real object as a fossil, but not as a fish, etc. So we can have, this is a cast of a primitive graver. I think the tendency, good museologists have to have the trend to have the most real object as possible. I will not show all the, well, for example, this is not a real object, you could say. No, this is not in the museum as a real object. This is in the museum as a real theory, because nobody has never seen an Homo habilis. But with all the real objects, we can imagine the theory what a Homo habilis could look like. Okay, scientific method. We were more than 5 years searching an object only to put down, we have no idea of what this is, to show that science doesn't know everything. And this is why science is doing research. So the message of many museums is to say that there's only one clear-cut knowledge, and then I am sorry about you, says the museum to the visitor, but you come too late. Science is already done. And so this is not a good message. So the mistake is a tool of the scientist. Normally, a professional scientist is always wrong. And when he's not wrong, he publishes a paper or he gets the Nobel Prize. So we have to give the idea of the real science in the museums. So to provoke vocations, you have to have this idea about the method, the scientific method. Advertising like this is scientifically proved is not a good idea of what is the popular thinking about science. So, but now, between different objects, it is a conversation. So the museological language is very rich if you make objects to speak together. Everything is conversation in science. To observe nature is a conversation of the human mind with reality. But a reflection is a conversation with ourselves. It's the same in a museum. The good measure of a good museum is not the number of visitors. Of course, if you don't have visitors, you have a problem. But the best measure of the quality of a museum is the kilos of conversation that you can provoke because of the visit. So, but the objects, they have also conversations between them. Here you have, for example, two helix with the same function, a natural helix and a cultural helix, and both, this is a spontaneous object, are working with the same function. I have no time to explain this beautiful example, but I will do, however, nevertheless. This is an object that I liked very much because it's a big fish eating a small fish, and we put this in a showcase, and I was spying the visitors in order to see their surprise. They sighed, no? We failed because nobody stopped in the front of this showcase, no? I asked to an adolescent who is... I agree with him that an adolescent or a child is the best proof of if something is working or not. You are really not interested in this object, and the reaction was a lesson for us, no? The typical reaction of adolescent, no, is indolence. No, I am not interested. You know? Why not? Oh, because all of us, we know that big fishes eat small fishes. So it's nothing new here. So we felt in the sense that for any scientist, for any paleontologist, the probability that the fossilization process starts exactly at the very moment that one fish is eating the other one is very low. So how to transmit this? So it's a philosophical question behind this. And this question is that to understand in science is to look what is in common between different things. So we searched for different fossils in which we had this phenomena. And then we could transmit the understanding. What these two objects have in common explains the behavior, because what they have in common is that the big fish is too small to eat a small fish that is too big. And then suddenly you see that first you have the accident and after you have the fossilization. So I think this is important for a museum of natural history, that the idea of the taphonomy is a source of beautiful examples. Okay, and this is a conversation between two different objects. So the language, the museum language, goes ahead. And this is analogy between beetles and cultural objects. Well, very clear that in order to show with one single image the power of diversity is that if you have a football team, you can always find a butterfly with the same colors. This gives you an idea very fast about the diversity. Okay, and this is an example of how to have a conversation between different objects. This is a showcase in which we have Rolling Stones, but ordered in 3 dimensions in space. In one dimension we have from the big to the small, in the other one from the white or the clear to the dark, and the other one from the sphericity to the ellipsoid form. So they are, the visitor takes 2 objects and immediately a conversation is established. For example, here we have tools of 2 million years ordered by time, function, and size. And here we have, for example, all the ammonites, 300 million years of, trilobites. They are ordered by size, by complexity, and by time. So no letters. Letters can be aside. Here you can see the whole evolution of trilobites in the mutual conversation of these objects. So you have object and object with object. Okay, we go further to see phenomena. This is a phenomena, a real phenomena, showing the 3rd law of Newton. If body A makes a force to body B makes the same force to body A in the same direction and opposite sense. This is a real object, and the motion and the intellectual joy, I think this is the key, we have to give intellectual joy, is that you are not speaking with Newton. You are speaking not even with the laws of Newton. You are in conversation with reality. This is the stronger thing. All that we have in schools and universities, in videos, in any other way, is a representation of reality. What is special in the museum is that you are direct with reality. It's exactly the difference between eating caviar or listening to somebody explaining how was his joy when he ate caviar. So I think the difference is very clear. So now this is perhaps the most interesting thing, the conversation between real objects and real phenomena. Here you have bubbles. This is an experience. And see that bubbles, when they are free, they have a circular symmetry. When they compete for space, it is 1 circumferences surrounded by 6 circumferences. But if uncertainty, if if the pressure of uncertainty is in a such way that the space is important, you get the form of hexagons. So this is a phenomena showing that, proving that hexagons save space. So this is an interesting idea. Objects can illustrate, phenomena can't demonstrate. So here you have the experiment. You are sure that hexagons pave in a plate surface. And here you have a lot of different objects that are hexagonal in nature, and it's nothing to do the architecture of bees with the skull of a shield of a turtle, or the eyes of an insect, etc. Okay, phenomena. Okay, you can have, for example, this is a duck swimming. Museographically, this you cannot see in nature. How succeeds a duck to swim? You cannot see even in many aquariums. Of course, you have, in order to understand how a duck swims, you need physics, this is why interdisciplinarity is important in a museum. It's important because nature is not responsible about the curricula of schools and universities. And here you can see how the duck closes when he goes forward and opens when he goes backwards. If not, the duck does this strange motion. No? So, as you can see, and we have lately, I go rapidly, metaphora. If something is out of our sensorium, we have 5 senses. Because it's very small, for example, we invented, this is an example of a good museographical metaphor. Here we have 1,000 ping pong balls, but they evolve so fast that you see only a white spot. But you can enlight this with a strobo and see the trajectories. And you can change the frequency of the strobo and see the microscopical configuration. Okay, now I have no time to explain this metaphor, but a good metaphor, here we can explain the delay of Boyle-Marriott, or the second principle of thermodynamics. Why even the most optimistic physicist doesn't wait to get all the molecules in a corner, because this is one state between trillions, and in the equilibrium there are many configurations. So look how rich is the museographical language in this sense. You have objects, you have phenomena, you have metaphors, and you have all the combinations: object with object, object with phenomena, phenomena with phenomena, objects with metaphor, metaphor, exactly. So all the other ways, computers, texts, are very important, but in my view, not in order to replace reality, but in order to have a complement, to explain reality. So the museographical language is enough rich if we have enough imagination. Okay, now I go to a second about the content. So I think that speaking now about natural history museums, I told to people who is thinking about this project that this is really a great challenge, because I am sure you can be the first modern natural history museum of the history if you try to explain, I think, 3 things. One is evolution. It's difficult to believe, but evolution and natural selection are not especially explained in natural history museums. Second is diversity. Diversity is also a great topic. And third is, especially for our times, the harmony between the humankind and nature. These are 3 topics that are very important. Evolution, how it can be explained? We did a small experience in Barcelona, showing a stone that is older than the Earth, a part of a meteorite, and to make an exhibit with a Kantian idea of space and time. Each time you make a step, you are advancing 8 million years in the history. And to show the story of life with the contribution to evolution. For example, I go to the proof of the oxygen in the atmosphere. Here you can see a stone of billions of years in which you can see the red, the oxide of iron, and this is the proof, the touching proof that the first big contamination in the planet was oxygen. And you can explain wonderful stories in order to communicate an intellectual joy. For example, this is a very modest fossil, it's the Cooksonia. And here the idea is to start a conversation. What is the conversation in this case? You ask why the terrestrial vegetation is mainly green. So this is a surprise, such a question. And the most common answer is a confusion between to understanding and to be used to. Many of the citizens will answer, because it has always been green. No, so this is not a good answer. And the answer I will try to provoke into you an intellectual joy is that for many, many billion of years, plants wanted to exit water. But they didn't succeed because it was a hard radiation, not enough humidity, too high temperature, and many of you would suggest, okay, they are mainly green because they metabolize the light with the light of the sun, with the chlorophyll, who is a green catalysator, no? And then this is already explained. But in science, we always have this bad comma. In water, we have all the colors. We have green plants, of course, but we have blue, we have red, we have orange, we have black even. So why in land we have only green? So the idea is that the first hero of the plants that succeed to exit water was green. Because if it will be a rose, we will be in the most kitsch landscape of this corner of the galaxy. And this can continue the discussion. This is an idea that remains in mind. Okay, and finally, good stories but with stories written with the museological language of objects, phenomena, and metaphors. I think that a good book starts with an index. It's the skeleton. And the shell is the stories that you can explain. But a good museum starts with 15, 20, or 40 brilliant ideas. And the last thing that you say is what is your pretension with the museum. So you can compare, for example, I will go to the third PowerPoint. This is an object that I saw recently in a museum of technology. And I asked suddenly to the guide, to the curator, why these strange aesthetics? Why the front wheel is so big and the back wheel is so small? And his answer was impossible to admit. He said, because they were very old, very ancient, and it was an old aesthetics. No. This object can be explained with this phenomena. You see, the chain was not invented. So the more big is the wheel, the more you advance. So only with this phenomena, in conversation with this object, you have an intellectual joy and a strong emotion. This is the pelvis invented by the dinosaurs. So if we explain the evolution, it's more important to explain what are the important contributions. The pelvis was a new language invented by dinosaurs. Because if you are out of water, a crocodile without pelvis has this motion, no? Which is rather antique, no? And dinosaurs invented with the pelvis this motion. The dinosaurs are extinct, but the ideas remains. And this is why birds have these flights, or Elvis his pelvis. So this is a case of convergences, but I think is important. Okay, I think I will stop here to give some space for comments or for criticism or for questions, but I think that the story of living beings is perhaps the most beautiful story that we have in our lives to explain. And to speak the evolution with evidence is really a great challenge. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, I'm Floris, a student of science communication at the nearby university. I was wondering, how would you communicate the vastness of time and space in the universe? A few numbers came by, like 300 million years ago, 5 billion years ago. How would you communicate that in a museum?
So you have to change the notion of space. This exhibition about evolution has 1.8 kilometers through the museum. And each time you make a step of 1 meter, you are advancing 8 million years in a linear way, because normally we use the logarithmic scale in order to avoid these big distances. But of course, you see that in the first 200 meters, nothing happened, because they were only bacteria. So in a linear way, you can see the acceleration of events and how evolution behaves. So the idea of space and time is taken in this case linearly. No? And I think it's very important to introduce time in museums, because almost all the museums have a 80% past, 20% future. And I think the good measure is 40% past and 60% future. In natural history, this has been to discuss. But, for example, what I would add in a natural history museum is the natural ideas to be used as cultural ideas. Is a new economy now called the blue economy, based on this idea. For example, the lotus effect. You know that by nanotechnology, under the rain, the leaves of lotus remain dry. Why? Because drops behave as drops of water behave as drops of mercury. So there are 40 laboratories now searching such artificial substance in order to paint buildings, etc. Termites, they have in the savannah, where outside is 50 degrees in the day and less than 0 in the night, they keep always 27 plus minus 0.2 degrees without using oil, without using CO2 emissions. So architects should know what termites know because of evolution in order to do the design. So this is a question of a natural history museum to speak about future. No?
Okay, thank you very much. Another question. Comment? Yes?
Hello, I'm Astrid Kromhout. I work for Naturalis in the communications department. And I'm wondering, Mr. Wim van der Weijden just said, as a museum you have to choose for one target audience. And there are so many we want to cater for, but you have to choose. And that's a problem for I think, a lot of musea. How did you do that? Did you choose for Cosmocaixa, or?
Okay, we are good friends, but that doesn't mean that we agree on everything, no? I would say that the audience of a museum should be absolutely universal, because the language are emotions. And this is why, if you ask, the rainforest is for adults, for children, for full professors, or for immigrants. No, because you are not using a text, you are using emotions. And a good exhibit has enough emotions for everybody. So I would say that is no a target, that is the only way, because you are using reality, that the audience should be radically universal. Not the activities, of course. The activities can be targeted to children, to professors, but the museum in itself, not. It's a concentrated reality. I think this is a good definition of a museum. A museum is concentrated reality, and everyone takes something different.
Except that you told us that you cater for a 9+. Huh? The museum was designed for children from 9 onwards.
Oh yeah, I think, yes, I appreciate the comment. An adult, museographically, is 8 years old. 8, 9, or 10. It's not adult sexually, but he is from the point of view of the museological. If you have not language, you can make special rooms in the museum, but avoiding that the museum becomes a children's museum. That happens very frequently. Children do not like things that are done for children. This is what we discover. Not the children aesthetics. I agree with him, but he said that everything that likes children likes the adults, but the opposite is not true. On the contrary, if you go in a museum, if a full professor of physics goes in a museum and see children aesthetics, he's received by the Donald Duck, he will go immediately, no? And what the children want is to share with the adults everything. The most frequent thing asked by a children to his father, walking together in a museum, is, "Daddy, this is real or not?" If it is not real, it's for children. If it is real, then it's for me and for my father. So the idea is that, I appreciate the comment, adult means 8 or 9 years. If you are younger, the best professor of a citizen younger than 9 years is another citizen younger of 9 years. And it's not important if it's true or not. The important is to have a good interaction with reality. Good question.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sorry that we have to stop here. I hope you will stay this afternoon and we'll have some chance to speak with you later on. For the moment, thank you very much.
Thank you.